Okay, so we're going to move on now to the second part of our decade in review, looking back at the 2010s on Coronation Street. Last week we covered 2010 to 2012, which saw the advent of the podcast, didn't it? 2012 was when Conversation Street launched, and now we are well into territory that we've covered in massive detail on the podcast.
So you should be able to remember all of it.
We'll see how much we can remember. I certainly need notes for this one. But you know what? Looking back on some of these stories, I'm like thinking, did I like that? I can't even remember now. Did I like that character? No, did I hate that character? And so I'm kind of thinking back in some of them and getting I may not have enjoyed parts of it at the time, but I may be looking back with rose-tinted glasses about things, or there might be things that look like they're a bit boring now, but I might have enjoyed it at the time. So we'll see how I'm going, but please nobody re-listen to any of those old episodes of the podcast and say, back in episode 54 you said blah 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 about this character and now you're saying blah blah blah. So I don't know, I'm just going with now what I think.
I've consistently claimed to be is inconsistent.
Absolutely, we're inconsistent, we're very, very fickle, and
fickle as hell.
We just say whatever springs to mind,
don't even feel,
and if we don't know, we just make it up. So I love the story where Dennis Tanner became
Nun.
We watched Dracula the other day, didn't we? Talk about nuns, that was good. Dennis Tanner became a lollipop man. Was that in 2013 maybe?
Tell me what happened in 2013.
Behind the scenes, it was all a bit of
it was absolute drama.
It was. There was more I was going to say garbage then. There was more drama off screen than there was on screen almost in Coronation Street for 2013, because this was the year that Stuart the Hat Blackburn took over from Phil Collinson as producer. And Phil had been a producer for quite a while. And so these days you only have to say the word Stuart Blackburn to a certain type of Coronation Street fan to get sort of a pretty major negative reaction.
Considering what is to follow in the controversial things that happened in 2013, I'm really surprised that you decided to open this section by saying controversial things happened, such as Stuart Blackburn becoming producer, because the next thing on the list is Mike Lavelle and William Roach were both arrested for sex offences.
Yeah, that was quite controversial.
And honestly, I think you're right to say that certain people, certain fans, might even still stand by saying Stuart Blackburn was still the worst thing to happen to Coronation Street that year.
We were directly affected by Stuart Blackburn taking over as producer.
I don't agree, but having spent the last 48 hours immersed in Twitter drama...
What, Harry and Meghan stuff?
I know that things get hysterical on the internet very quickly.
Certainly do. Yeah, so, Mike Lavelle, they were both arrested, I think it was fairly early on in the year. It all turned out fine, by the way, just in case anyone hasn't been keeping up with that.
Who doesn't know, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah, well, Mike was cleared of all charges in September, and it wasn't until the following year that William Roach was. But there was a lot of... it must have been very difficult,
very
a bit
tumultuous.
Of a real baptism of fire for Stuart Blackburn in that first year. And then also, in August...
We're talking about it very flippantly, but of course we understand, and we have spoken in length about the impact and,
Exactly. It was pretty big and pretty serious at the time, please. And so, the other thing, the controversy, I suppose, was Chris Fountain having to be sacked in August. Do you want to...
Am I allowed to find this funny? He's so pathetically misogynistic. It was just... It went straight from offensive to just like...
Some videos surfaced of him, didn't they?
It was like the David Brent of teenagers, just trying to be edgy and provocative. He wrote a rap song, which was just it'd been on the internet for a while, but he was rapping in a mask.
Yeah.
And then it became apparent that it was actually
Chris
beloved
Fountain,
Coronation Street star Chris Fountain rapping, and the only thing I remember, and the only thing anyone ever remembers about what the lyrics were, was that he promised to rape you on your birthday.
So we had Kevin having to go off to Germany because of ill bill or something, wasn't it? Where Ken Barlow went off to Canada to look after Adam Barlow, who'd fainted, or he'd had blackouts or something, hadn't he? Do you remember? And Ken was over there for like 8 months looking after him, and then Tommy got upset because
Tina was hanging around with...
He was hanging around with David, I think.
I thought it was Graham.
No, Graham had gone by this point. Tina was hanging about with David, I think, or David had been I think David
basically, Tommy Duckworth and Tina McIntyre were dating, and then he just went, text her, like, you dumped, and then left. And it was the most realistic breakup Coronation Street's ever had.
It was just like, yeah, over.
Dump her by text, never have to speak to her again.
Yeah, but then they kept mentioning Tommy for months afterwards, I remember.
Coronation Street's got this really bad habit of, like, what you do, where you can't just let something be. You can't just, like, talk about something you don't like without mentioning the fact that you don't like it. They can't talk about a character who's disappeared under mysterious and circumstances in a dark cloud without bringing this character up over and over again.
Yeah, and they did. They really can't help with him. And we mentioned Todd earlier on the podcast, and they kind of did it with him for a bit as well.
Like Kate Connor, she left the show, perfectly reasonable. She wanted to go. Contract was up. She left. She was written out. Never spoken of ever again. It's like she never existed. She could have never been there, and you would have been none the wiser. Blimmin' Todd and Tommy Duckworth. Blah blah. Where's Tommy? Blah blah. Where's Todd?
Yeah.
For like the next decade.
So let's look back at some of the other.
Do you know what it reminds me of? That sketch, Don't Mention the War, from
Fawlty Towers.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, he can't not mention it.
So some of the other big stories this year. So it started off with the climax of domestic abuse story, and that I think looking back, I have got fond memories of that story as a whole. And we went into 2012 wondering what would happen, because Tyrone by this point had his eyes opened, thanks to Fizz, I think, about just how awful Kirsty was. But their wedding was planned for the National Television Awards week that year. So we were like, are they going to get married? Are they not? And then I think what actually happened, if I'm remembering rightly, was that he kind of revealed to the congregation on the day of the wedding everything that had been happening. And then they kind of took their argument back home. That's when she fell down the stairs, which I think you mentioned last week. And then, of course, Ty gets accused of abusing her. He eventually goes to court, and again we had no idea how this was going to end, if I remember right, but she turns up at the day of the court to kind of confess and say, oh yeah, it was me all along, and then she gets thrown in the slammer. So I think that was a pretty nicely tied up storyline, I suppose. I think the main negative side I've got, my memory of it, was it was something to do with a phone and text messages or picture messages that had been sent, and people didn't really understand about deleting photos off of phones or something. Do you remember that? Gemma was shaking her head. I remember us talking at length at the time that it didn't seem like Tyrone and Fizz or Kirsty or someone around there completely knew how mobile phones worked. But on the whole,
it was only 2013, and they had really just only been invented.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely did enjoy that story. As I also enjoyed, I'm just having another look down here, I'm going to say the Roy and Hayley story. Now, early on in 2013 was when it was announced, shock news, that Julie Hesmanhouse would be leaving Coronation Street, and fans across the country
never
wept.
To be heard of again.
She has gone on to do quite well, I believe. But we all knew straight away that there was no way that would make sense that Roy and Hayley would split up, which is the same line they used for Rana and Kate last year when they had Rana killed off. But in this instance, I absolutely think the only way forward would be to kill off Hayley. And before all that happened, there was an interesting story with Roy where he finds out about his dad, St. John, and he dies, and then Roy goes a bit crazy. Do you remember? And he did that.
Say that.
He had bit of a breakdown, and he went walking around on the red rack in his dressing gown. I think it was Deirdre that found him or something. And then he started piling up chairs in the cafe. I thought there were some really, really good scenes there, played by David Nilsson, and it was interesting to see that kind of side of him brought up again when he started the boat fire last year. But obviously the main thing that the croppers had to deal with the second half of 2013 was Hayley's cancer diagnosis, and that was harrowing and terrible, but there were some fantastic performances all the way around. It was really nice to get plenty of time for Julie and David to play out those scenes with Roy and Hayley, where she was talking about wanting to end her life because she didn't want to revert back to, sort of in her mind, to how she was when she grew up, when she was a boy. That story was, although difficult for some people to watch, it was done pretty well. I think the main negative thing I would have to say about it was that when they brought back Haley's son, didn't they, and his grandkids for a little bit, and that was always a fairly controversial aspect of Haley's character anyway, because people didn't really like the idea that Haley, when she was before she'd had her operation, she had fathered a child, and then she told Roy that she wasn't a virgin, and then they tried to retcon it, saying, "Well, I was only a virgin."
No, she said she was a virgin.
So it was the fact that she was supposed to have had this kid years ago was a bit weird anyway. But then it seemed like they'd buried it, which was fine. But no, they brought it right back again with this, and then this Christian guy comes with his kids, and I didn't think that was really needed, but on the whole I really enjoyed that story. I know that you don't feel the same about that, so what are some 2013 stories that you remember enjoying?
I mean, one of the things that people will remember of that year was the fire.
Rovers fire.
Yeah.
That was quite cool. That was Callum Logan that started that, wasn't it? I think when I was doing some research for this on Corriepedia, I saw that they had purposefully not spent as much money on Coronation Street in the 6-8 months running up to the fire, because Phil Collinson wanted to leave with a bang. This was his final big story, and he wanted to put lots of money into making the Rovers fire really spectacular, and that was the kind of the culmination of Carl, who was still annoyed at Stella, his ex-missus. He was now going out with Jason, I think, and he was spurned by this, so he wanted to destroy her livelihood. But unfortunately for Sunita, who followed Carl down into the Rovers cellar, she got a little bit caught up in it and got burnt to a crisp. Although that wasn't actually how she died, was she?
She died in the hospital.
Yeah, he
killed her in the
pulled
hospital.
out her breathing tubes or something like that. So that was quite cool.
And the nurse went past and she went, "Oh, thanks, that saves me a job."
Yeah, dead. I enjoyed the Rovers fire. I thought it was nicely done. Maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity for redecorating the Rovers, because it looks pretty much the same now as it did
They're
beforehand.
not going to redecorate it.
I think the Rovers is what it is now.
It looks like a pub. That's what pubs look like.
I mean, we so rarely go into pubs. My idea of a pub is the Rovers return.
You won't let me go to a pub.
You can go to a pub if you want to, just not now.
Yeah, I'll leave you outside like a dog tied up.
Well,
Give me your wallet.
Bring me a bowl of J2O to lick from outside. That was also, do you remember Craig Tinker thought that he had started the fire because he was smoking a cigarette or something outside the back of it, and he said he threw the butt into the Rovers door or something. And I think it's hilarious that beforehand, and I think since, there's been no mention or that I remember of Craig Tinker having any desire to smoke. So it was a little bit of
put him right off.
Was it? Maybe that's what you need.
Scare him straight.
Yeah, the best way to stop smoking is to start a fire and kill somebody.
You either commit arson and manslaughter, or vape.
Yes. Well, this is about...
And they have different flavours, so probably think of the vape first, which should be of...
This is about the time that vaping started, wasn't it? Around 2013, 14. I don't know, I just trying to remember. But yeah, I mean, I maybe Craig would do that now. So you can't start a fire with a vape.
I don't think so. He seems like such a nice young man.
Well, there wasn't Sunita that died in the fire, but there was one character, one of the fire officers called Tony, I think, who was one of Paul Kershaw's colleagues.
It was a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Tony with an I. Who died there.
Which I think sexist, because I bet she signed it with a heart over the I. But women can be Tony with a Y if they want.
They can be whatever
they can be anything they want.
Exactly. And speaking of Paul the fireman, we can't talk about 2013 without the
sadly
classic
misjudged
play the white man story.
Racial discrimination storyline that tried really hard to tackle the topic of racism without offending anybody, and so picked the most baffling racist sentiment that anyone's ever heard, with the fireman, what's his face?
Paul
saying, "Don't play the white man."
Yeah, I can't remember.
To
I don't know who he said it to, but he was playing a game
He
of
was
darts,
he
and it
was
was
there
Lloyd
with
got over.
Lloyd, and he was like, "What the hell did you just say?" And he's like, "Calm down, it's just a phrase," and everyone's going,
You know, we all say
"What
it.
does that mean?"
It was a really, really
I've
badly
even forgotten
misjudged story.
what it meant to be.
I think it was supposed to be like play fair or something.
I thought he said, "Don't play the white man." I can't
No,
remember
he
now.
said he didn't. He said play the white man.
Oh,
And
it's really bizarre.
it's really bizarre. Coronation Street can be very, very good at issues-based stories, but I can't think of any in recent memory that was judged quite so badly as this. I mean, sometimes they don't quite hit the mark because an issue is, you know, tackled at a surface level and then the story's dropped for a while. Like, I mean, this Asher story was very good, but then it was dropped. I'm sure it's going to be back, but others maybe haven't been quite given the breathing room it needs. But this one was like, yeah, casual racism is important, but using that phrase and
I made
from
the
there it was just
point. I think
downhill.
I made the point at the time that it's like casual racism is insidious because it's not just making stupid comments, it's how you treat people and how they're treated in society and assumptions that people make about you based on your race. It's not just making a random comment that is misjudged and then
the whole
not
street
misjudged.
turns
It was
on
just
you.
like, why would you, like, if you're going to be racist, why would you pick that?
I know
It's
bad.
weak.
And I can't really remember very much about where the story went. I think probably like Lloyd ended up
It
having
just
to
really,
rescue Paul for something at some
It just
point.
really felt like they wanted to make a big impact, but they were too afraid to actually have real impactful racism that actually would.
Yeah.
I think a guy of Lloyd's age too, I think he would have heard so much rubbish from people over the years. I would be surprised.
Oh, here comes our creaky cat through the
Yeah.
door again. Yeah, I agree. That was bad. And I think there has been more of a ramp up of issue-based stories in Coronation Street in the 2010s.
I'd like to see them
it
try
just-
and tackle it again.
Yeah,
I just
have
think they're
another go.
always a bit wary of sacrificing a character and making them seem unsympathetic for like however long the story runs.
Well, I think this I can't remember whether it was this year or the following year it was this year that Paul left, so that this was his exit story as well. I think that I think people I think Lloyd forgave him in the end, but maybe Eileen couldn't. I don't remember, but that was a poor story in the middle of the year then. And there were a few stories in that year.
I just keep thinking like, oh man.
There were a few stories
So
that year that
cringy.
was a bit like, for example, that was towards the end of that year in the autumn was when we had Peter start his affair with Tina, and that he'd been going out with Carla, and I think it was even on his wedding day to Carla in the autumn that he decides to start an affair and have a snog with this character who he'd maybe had one or two scenes with before then. And Corrie,
Yeah, I
Corrie
know, but the thing
sometimes
is that the animal magnetism and clear attraction to one another, as well as their compatibility, made Tina and Peter relationship just feel credible to me. And by that I mean not at all.
I think as we move into 2014, it did end up having quite a cool climax. But sometimes when they put two characters who never have scenes together for one scene, you think, okay, they're working towards something here, and then the next minute you know it, they've got a full blown affair, and it's like they've been best bosom buddies or whatever for years. But that wasn't great. As I say, it does get a bit better. On the subject of Peter, we also had on the street Barlow's bookies closed that year because I think it was Rob maybe that had a big win and Peter couldn't afford to pay it out, so Coronation Street decided let's reflect modern day Britain by putting a what do you call it?
Tat shop.
A tat shop, basically. Barlow's
It's like a charity
buys.
shop, but all the money goes to Tracy.
Basically, yeah. Tracy and Rob took over Barlow's buys, the pawnbrokers there. And that can't have lasted more than 2 or 3 years, really, could
Because
it?
they were trying to sell CD players and things in 2013.
Do you remember they
And
always...
like PC games.
Do you remember they had a copy of Windows 95
Yeah.
in the background?
What are you thinking?
Well,
It was
apparently...
like your nan trying to go down the car boot sale.
Well, apparently the items that filled up that shop, again I read this when I was doing some research this time, was the cast and the crew were just asked to bring in a load of tat
Bring
from
in
home
your
so they didn't
rubbish.
have to buy tats to display. So somebody obviously had Windows 95 knocking
Michael,
about in their attic.
I'm sorry, but you can't tell me it would have cost a great deal of money to have furnished that shop to the level at which they did.
Well, you know, when you burn down the
also-
Rovers return, you've got to save the penny somewhere.
are you also trying to tell me that the props department didn't have this stuff knocking about? Or was this how they made the props department? There was nothing there before 2013, and they tricked everybody into bringing multiple glass chandeliers in and sofas and pictures of people as the mayor.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah, so that...
Well, you and I have both been to the props department, and if you follow us on Instagram, you've seen photos of the props department. You've heard us describe the props department. It's enormous.
That is an Aladdin's cave of tat, isn't it?
I suppose this was not where they had this set, though.
No, I think...
So maybe they had a really small props department, and so everything, like, literally, Barlow's Buys was where they stored the props.
Maybe. Who knows? But it didn't last very long before it turned into a flower shop. I don't particularly miss it. I think I like it better as a flower shop.
Yeah,
I remember
do.
when it opens and thinking, oh, it's nice that Tracy's gone back to her roots, because she, at the age of like
Loved
15
cat.
or so, went into became a florist, and she worked for Maggie Redmond. So that was quite cool.
Yeah, I
making
remember
her
you
go
saying
back to
she's a
that.
florist, and that was
Nice
one of
little
your facts
callback.
that you knew about Tracy that
Tracy
nobody
used to
else
be-
knew.
I know, now everybody knows she's a florist.
It's rude.
Yeah, but my now fact that is lost to the mist of time is that she used to run a tat shop.
Yeah.
How many people still remember that?
She can look at a copy of Windows 95 and tell you exactly how much it's worth.
I'm looking down
And
the list.
so can everyone else.
I'm trying to look at other things that happened in that year and trying to... it doesn't feel like it was a great year. There was the whole... there was the continuation of the Kylie's pregnant story, because when we finished the look back in the first 3 years, just last week, we found that Nick had gone to bed with Kylie after dumping... Who did he dump at the wedding? Was it Carla? Maybe on Leanne, I'll lose track. Anyway, he'd gone to bed with Kylie, and then because Kylie was married to David at the time, David was led to believe a little bit that he was going to be a father. But then I think Gail maybe overhears Kylie talking about that. No, Lewis Archer overheard Kylie talking about the fact that she was pregnant. Then he used her to help him on his little scheme. Yes, 2013 was the end of the first of this Nigel Havers, Lewis Archer stint. So 2013 was the Italian for Lovers DVD, and that was an awesome exit, Gemma.
Yeah.
Introduce us to the famous cocktail Perfect Bellini. That was awesome.
Do you want this peach schnapps with champagne?
That was one of my favourite exits of the year. That's possibly.
And I know it's not how you make
exit
a peach Bellini, so shut up.
So anyway, Kylie eventually. So we're kind of left guessing about who the father of Kylie's baby is, but yeah, it turns out that it was David. So that's kind of good, really. But we also had in that story David taking Nick out in the van and then getting him involved in the car crash, which led to Nick's brain injury. And I remember at the time it had been a bit controversial about whether David did that on purpose, whether he kind of purposely sat the van in front of the path of an oncoming truck or whatever it was. And I never thought it was, but then I think they said at a later date in the show.
We watch it and go, no, it's obvious he didn't. But then the show was like, no.
I don't know whether David would be that stupid.
For the purposes of this storyline.
But that was a real interesting turning point in Nick's character, wasn't it? Giving him brain damage, because he was obviously comatose for a little bit as well. But then he woke up, and he, especially through the autumn, he was prone to these spats of violence and anger and forgetfulness, and it's given a bit of a spark. And I know I don't know whether it's bad to say that it's really nice that he's got a brain injury, but it gave him...
It's not real.
Exactly. Always remember that. Whenever we say something controversial...
If we say something rude, even if it's about the actors, it's not real.
Not real. There's no such person as Ben Price.
There's this jogged in memory that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show about what I did this week. And one of the things I did do this week, as you know, was to watch Haunted.
Oh, yes.
Was it called Haunting with Coronation Street or
Something
Haunted?
like that.
It was a spin-off show from Most Haunted with Yvette Fielding, who's a presenter who does ghost shows. And I think I thought of it... Was the late,
great Derek Corrie
The reason I thought of it was because Derek
Soul.
Corrie used to be on that show, and he died recently. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to watch that, because it was the Isle of Man episode that we mentioned when I was telling you the Isle of Man facts, Coronation Street. And so I watched some of it. I didn't watch all of it. It was so brilliant because it's really old. So Jack P. Shepherd is there, and he's really young. It's got Tupeli Dorgu, it's got Wendy Peters, it's got Catherine Kelly, and it's got Kim Marsh in it. I think she was Kim Lomas at the time. with her lovely bob, right?
Mm.
And in this theatre, it just made me laugh. There was a ghost that haunted the theatre, and this isn't a joke. Kim Marsh bonded with this ghost over their shared haircut.
What?
And she started crying because she got possessed by the ghost.
I need to see
because
this.
they had the same haircut.
Gemma watches loads of stuff after I go to bed, because usually you come to bed like 3 or 4 hours after me, don't you? So I think I need to see that
alone.
sometime. Awesome. Right, new characters.
I highly recommend it, but I'm just going to tell you it's not very good. And also, if you do believe in the spirit world or ghost hunting in any credible sense, you're going to be very disappointed with Jack P. Shepherd and Catherine Kelly.
Oh, were they a bit sceptical, weren't they?
No, they were very disrespectful to the ghosts, and they used the F word.
What? They're swearing, Jack P. Shepherd?
Jack P. Shepherd definitely swore at the ghosts.
Well, flip me.
Which I think is bad, and we all know Zach Baggins, very bad, provoking the ghosts, not good. Controversial. Bad methods, don't approve.
Let's go back to 2013. I've got a list here of other new characters that were introduced to us that year. One of them, Sinead Tinker, who I obviously said goodbye to recently. I remember when she came in, she was like brought in as a potential girlfriend for Chesney, wasn't she?
Very different.
And then there was a funny story where, well, not funny, a weird story where he was going back and forth between Katie and Sinead. Like he had his pick, didn't he?
It always feels like a bit of wish fulfillment on behalf of some people involved in behind the scenes, whereby these guys who are like, you know, not picked for their looks, no offence, go after these women who are like smoking hot 10 out of 10s as though they would have a choice.
I know, it's funny. Lucky and he's having an Emma
but
going
does
after
it
him
not
recently
just prove to us all that looks aren't all that matters?
Exactly.
Rubbish. Anyone who is not good looking knows that's not true.
We had Tim join the show last year. We actually, not last year, 2013. We actually had him down as a nominee for Wrong'un in 2013 because
Tim.
Tim, because he was a bit of he was a proper layabout, and he'd because Faye was trying to find him online, wasn't she? And he came in and he was just a really awful feckless dad. And he has become more lovable in the years since that for some people. I think we went through a period of loving him, but not so much at the moment. But you know, our opinions on characters can change. I'm sure around about this point in 2013 we were slagging off Leanne left, right and centre, and I think she's great now.
I know, I used to hate Leanne.
She was our character around this time that people would say, love the podcast, I often really quite agree with you, but why are you so mean about Leanne? I can't agree with what you say about Leanne. But I think it's just nice that they're giving her a bit of a break, and I enjoy watching her now. We had Steph as well arrived in 2013. Didn't enjoy Steph in her first few appearances, did we? Slaggy Steph. We had Andrea appeared at the end of the year, and that was a funny story where, do you remember? It was, I think, Lloyd and Steve. Steve had met Andrea at his history class or something, and he was trying to make out to Michelle that his new friend Andrea was just like not a looker at all, and he's only interested in her because they get on. And then Hayley Tomadden as Andrea turns up at the Rovers, and Michelle's like, and I think she'd helped Steve. Andrea had helped Steve buy Michelle a dress or something like that for Christmas, and Michelle was not happy with that. We had Maddie Heath first appearance in 2013, and Gemma on the 2nd of October, your birthday, 2013. Yeah. You got the best present of all. Pat Phelan made his first appearance on Coronation Street. I was looking at
that last year, I think, because it came up when I was scrolling through for the quiz, and I was like, oh, birthday present.
Yeah. Pat Phelan in his first appearance, like we knew that he was good, but we didn't really get a real sense of what he would become, because this was just would he not pay Owen some money or something, so Owen stole his motorbike or something like that.
He had his fancy house.
So I can't remember how much of an impression he actually made there. It wasn't until 2014, 2016 kind of time that he became the Pat Phelan that we went on to really, really love. We've a couple of leaving characters we haven't mentioned. We said goodbye to Mandy Kamara that year. I don't know whether anyone particularly misses her. Second, Ryan Connor went off to be replaced a few years later by current Ryan. We said goodbye to Brian Packham, and I remember at the time being really disappointed that Brian was leaving.
I know.
Really, really like Brian,
He
and there's
was
just
good.
something about his return that hasn't quite captured what I really loved about him. Sylvia left. That was in the midst of the the cancer storyline, wasn't it? Because who plays Sylvia? Dropped out of my head. Stephanie Cole.
Yeah.
She had a family crisis that she had to leave for. And also we said goodbye to Dr. Matt Carter last year. That year, I keep saying last year. Which can only be a good thing because it meant that we got to see Dr. Gaddis. So that's 2013. So although there were some highs, I'm not looking back on that year with a huge amount of fondness. Let's see what 2014 has to bring. Well, Gemma, this was the first year that Coronation Street started filming in Media City. We chronicled last week in the podcast how there was a bit of stalling in the building of this, and they had to put back the finishing date. But at the end of 2013 was when they finished off filming there. In 2014, we started to see the new set appear, and I remember at the time thinking, are they going to have a big episode to unveil it? Are they just going to have one episode it's the old set, one episode the new set? They actually did quite well in the end, because although in some ways I was hoping for a grand unveiling and a fanfare, they kind of dotted it in every now and then, didn't they? And eventually, and some scenes they'd have the old one, some scenes they'd have the new one, and it was phased in pretty seamlessly, which is probably the way they should have done it. Obviously you can now fit 2 cars down the street. That was the big selling point at the time, wasn't it? Although
it's important.
Yeah. And somebody put, I think, I don't remember whether it was Corriepedia or Paul from Corrie Art recently put a picture of 1970s Coronation Street set on Twitter, and that really looked like one car going down, didn't it? But I didn't think in 1980s, 1990s
They didn't have cars
too
anyway.
restricted anyway. But anyway, new set, still loving it. Old set is razed to the ground currently.
Not then though.
Not then. At the time, we were thinking, what should be done with it? Should it be kept open?
So many thoughts about what they should have done with it.
Because there had been the tour that was going on of the old set, and that was closed. And then once the new set opens, they opened that up for the members of the public to go and see. And I think I'm just trying to think what I'm trying to say. I like the new set. It's a shame that they didn't do more with the old one, but
they really should have kept it as a piece. I've said this so many
historical
times.
piece.
It's cultural history, and I don't care whether you watch the show or not.
But
it's just as much important to the people of this country and the culture of the last 60 years. I know it's not the original. I know it's not even the second. Blah 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 blah. Just as much important to the people of this country as any stately home.
No, I agree.
It really is.
Cultural history.
It was absolutely ludicrous that they didn't put any thought or care into preserving it.
Well, they did think about it, and then they thought all these people are offering us more money to knock it down.
I don't understand how they couldn't have transported it somewhere else.
Well, what they did, they were at least able to transport the cobbles, weren't they? Because they
used
form
the
the current
cobbles
Victoria Street.
So whatever. I just find it.
And on the tram stop in the new set, there's Handel. Used to be an old Handel of the Rovers.
I just don't understand. Like even a museum could have taken. I mean, I was expecting, National Trust or somebody to even think about it. They're too busy sitting around their thumbs up their asses or something. But I think it was. I can't remember which museum it was. But there's this notoriously ugly, like brutalist style. Estate, like council estate. It's a horrible block of flats that everyone who lived there just hated their lives and thought it was miserable and horrible. And they preserved a very large piece of the exterior of that for the purposes of museum future display. They could do that to if they can recognise the cultural value of a piece of a council estate. Why not something that's been on
Coronation Street? It makes me wonder, will this Coronation Street ever move? I mean, I know it's more purpose-built now, and it feels like there's no real need for it.
It felt to me like the unspoken argument was, well, that's just one of a series of, who knows, infinite number of Coronation Streets that we can create and discard at will. So preserving this is no more important than preserving the one before it or the one after it. But that's no way to live your life. That's why we don't have pieces of art, certain things have gone missing or
That's why we don't
Houses
have all
have been
those Doctor Who
demolished.
episodes from the 60s.
Good point. It's exactly the same thing.
Also going on behind the scenes in 2014, as we said earlier, this was when William Roach was cleared of all charges against him, so that was great. Ken could come back from Canada, and Mike Lavelle, even though he came back to the show early in 2014, he was written out again pretty sharply afterwards because he admitted to taking Class A drugs around his trial time. So he went off and got himself sorted with that, and then I think Bill had a broken arm or something that time. He was back by the end of the year. So hopefully, I think that was kind of the end of the main controversies that Stuart Blackburn had to deal with, and then it was just him as producer that was the problem. Although, even looking back on some of the stories in 2014, I'm looking quite favourably on these. We obviously had Hayley's suicide at the start of the year, which I thought was done really, really well. It is a shame that since then Roy hasn't been as key a character in Coronation Street as he had been up to this point, but it's nice that we've seen a bit more of his extended family recently. Also that year, I mean, the main Britain's Got Talent week was pretty cool because that was the Who Killed Tina story, and we quite enjoyed that.
I loved it.
Well, Peter had been dating Tina sort of on and off since as we said last year, when he had his wedding to Carla, but by May time, I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened. I think it was because Carla got pregnant, and then Peter decided that he was going to stay with her, but then she had a miscarriage because she was going to have an abortion, wasn't she? But then she pulled out of it. But whatever it happened, Peter realised it was all a little bit messy, and he'd better stick with the woman he married. And then I think Tina was going to reveal all, basically. And this whodunit was done in an interesting way because they showed some suspects and they'd filmed various endings. And I can't think of any other times when Coronation Street has said, it's going to be one of these.
They
showed us
actual footage in advance that was definitely going to be used on the show, which was really interesting. And they filmed the same scene with they had Rob doing it, obviously, because it ended up being Rob that killed Tina. They had Carla. Peter, Carla. I think that was it.
Tracy, maybe I'm thinking.
Someone else who was like, it's not them.
Yeah. But I remember at the time on the podcast, because we did a little camera extra at the end of the show, you said, well, it's definitely not Rob, because that scene with Mark Bayliss,
it's not Rob because they filmed it. It was poorly filmed, and the sound quality was clearly inferior to the rest of them.
Yeah, I remember.
And then that was the one that they used.
They were just trying to.
No, it's obvious that the other ones all got filmed at a different time because they weren't real.
Maybe.
In hindsight, that was the one that stood out the most.
Well, poor old Rob.
I still stand by the fact, if you go back and listen to all of those side by side, you will see exactly what I mean when I say that was the poorest quality one of all.
I do feel a bit sorry for Mark Bayliss because he had to kind of fall on his sword a little bit here because...
No, I think he pushed her, didn't he? Into a big, nice mat.
There was a scuffle because she was saying that she was going to reveal all.
She goes, I'm born Gobby.
Yeah, and he says, you'll die Gobby or something. But there was a scuffle. He didn't mean to push her, but for one reason or another, he went over.
To bash her head in with
that was great because what we didn't realise at the time was that she wasn't dead yet. She wasn't dead yet.
She's
and when Rob went down the stairs from the builder's yard and then she kind of got up, we were both like, oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Oh my god.
And I loved the transition when he clocked her in with that what was it? No, it was a crowbar. I'm trying to think of one of those things that we've been finding in the Betty's Hot Pot things. He clubbed her in with a crowbar, and then it transitions to somebody sticking a knife into a bit of meat or something in the Rovers. That was cool. Gemma and I do like the darker, grislier side of Coronation Street, don't we? And I know there's lots of Coronation Street fans that don't.
For a nice bit of light relief.
That was pretty cool, I think. But yeah, as I was saying, I feel a bit sorry for Mark Bayliss because Rob was a really interesting character, and I liked seeing the developing romance between him and Tracy. I think that
he didn't die.
Kate and Mark had really great chemistry,
but Tina.
But yeah, unfortunately, Rob has had to be sent away to prison.
Tina's the character's not going to be in it anymore.
Do you remember when? Because Tina didn't actually die then, did she? She went to hospital.
Yeah.
Do you remember she was lying there on the hospital bed, all kind of scantily clad, with all her clothes half ripped off her?
Was it Lulu out of Fifth Element? What's the name of the character?
I have no idea.
You know the one I mean that just wears bandages.
I kind of remember.
And what's his name? Who's the guy who was in Sixth Sense?
Don't ask me about films.
The guy who was also in Fifth Element.
Bruce Willis?
Yeah, he was like, I'm strangely compelled to to remain by your side for no reason I can
When I
fathom.
remember Tina on the hospital bed, I'm thinking of Lady Gaga in the telephone video when she's got the table wrapped round her.
It is a fashionable look for women of a certain figure.
Anyway, I thought that was, for a storyline that started with a terrible decision to make Tina and Peter have an affair, that was quite a cool ending, I think. And it also led to Peter being arrested because everyone assumed it was him, thrown into prison with Jim McDonald. And this was the first time we'd seen Jim for 2 or 3 years, I think, and having Peter going into prison and then Jim arriving and doing his "what about you, Peter?" or something. He used one of his many catchphrases. And
is this when we made Jim Bingo?
this was when we made the Jim McDonald bingo on the podcast. That was fun.
Didn't I do it one time and got really drunk?
Probably.
Also, his nickname inside was the landlord, because this was when Peter was still battling for sobriety, right? And Jim was controlling him with alcohol smuggled in.
He was in charge of smuggling alcohol into the prison. You're right.
Not bum phones though.
No, although
Maybe
there was
bum phones too.
This was
Anything
when
you like, really.
this was when we
As long as it
started talking
fits.
about bum phones on the podcast, because the way that it ended, as far as I remember, for Jim at least, was that Steve reported Jim for having a phone because Jim was trying to get back with Liz.
Yeah.
And Steve was like, "I'm
Using
not having
him
any
as a
of
proxy.
this." Yeah, exactly. And Peter, Steve told the screws that Jim had a phone, and I remember the last scene that we saw of Jim there was being kind of manhandled back away. It's like,
Going, who was phone?
So I thought, and I don't know I honestly don't remember what I said about it at the time, but looking back, I was thinking, that was probably quite cool when that happened. But although it was really the start of the massive vilification of Jim, and I know he'd like beaten up Liz in the past and everything else, but it seemed that from that, Coronation Street wanted him to be a real villain, and we only got worse in his next appearance.
Beating your wife in those days was like having a mullet. It was acceptable. Nobody liked it. They just accepted it as part of life.
Yeah.
And you just dealt with it.
What else did we have this year? I suppose a feeling came in the previous year. This was when we saw him. It was the Trouble at Mills storyline when Owen was working for Phelan, I think, to convert the old mills, and then after Gary
run out of plyboard,
and then after Gary had that awesome fight with Phelan at the beginning of the year when he whacked him with a plank, and then Phelan
dunked him.
That was a fantastic
and it's
fight.
like, oh no, he's
dead.
dead. What?
And then he
disappeared.
That was brilliant. But
Excellent.
Phelan comes back to life, not for the last time, sorry, I have to say. And then he starts blackmailing Gary and Owen. And the only way that he would stop was if he coerced Anna into bed. And that was...
Should have known it was third time's the charm to kill Phelan.
That was really kind of grisly
Gross.
stuff. And it brought up the topic of, well, was Anna raped? Did she go into it willingly?
No.
So that was a real dark part of Coronation Street's history. But because that was when I was warming up to the idea of Phelan as a character, I loved it. And also, of course, this was around the time when really didn't like Hannah Windass. I think at the beginning of the podcast we were fairly ambivalent about her, but it was around
really
this time,
losing her shine.
like with Tina, who I really like, but overuse made me get a bit fed up of her, and making her seem a bit holier than thou and perfect. This happened to Hannah Windass around this time, and I was starting to get a bit fed up of her. I think we said goodbye to Owen and Katie Armstrong in 2014 as well, and I wasn't particularly sorry to see them go. I never really got into them, but I know that you liked Owen a lot more.
I like gruff buildermen who beat people up.
Any other stories for 2014 that stand out to you?
We had some new things, like the gym opened, and it didn't last very long, but I thought it was a good set, and I enjoyed the stories. I
remember it being a very small set, and they always filmed it from a particular angle.
How many running machines have you got in the gym? 3. How many ellipticals? 3. Where are they? They occupy the same space. We have to move one out of the way if you want to use it.
There are a few. The main scene I remember in the gym. There was a bit of drug stuff that went on at one point.
Steroids in the locker.
And I remember Nick punching. Was it Gary or somebody, or was it Cal? I can't remember. When he gets riled up because of his brain injury, and he was
rah.
Yeah, duff first, ask questions later.
And it was Devs, wasn't it? Or Dev was in charge.
Dev was in charge. Sharif was in charge as well. It was an interesting time in Coronation Street, but I just don't think they knew what to do with the gym after a few years. It was a little bit boring in the end. And also, all the actors keep
complaining.
Yeah.
I think that might have been, not that we know anything about it, but it just seems to me as though if you had the choice of sitting down and doing the scene or going on a treadmill and doing the scene, you might prefer the sitting down one.
We would anyway. The gym opened and the community centre opened with a massive param that year. Again, pretty underused at the moment. We haven't seen a grand reopening of the community centre since Underworld's moved back to the factory. You think that
what's her face, would be...
Yasmin.
Yasmin would be like, get out of my community centre, I want to do reading lessons. Like for Tim, for example, because this was the year that we found out he couldn't read.
Oh gosh, yeah. There were more kind of stories that we kind of think, it doesn't quite work, creeping into Coronation Street around this time.
This was the year when they first started going, should we just retcon stuff? Yeah, let's just retcon it.
Yeah, because
nobody's watched it before now.
That was not done well. That they revealed that for all this time Tim hadn't been able to read.
It's like, what about the time you were carrying newspapers around him? Oh, it was just for effect.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the pictures.
What about that time when you contacted Faye online?
I got my friend to do it for me.
And don't tell me you had webcams or FaceTime, because I'm sure that didn't exist back then. It did lead to a few scenes that I think I quite enjoyed, where he was having these lessons with Anna, and then Sally got jealous or something. But yeah, that was badly done. As was, I'm not looking back fondly on the Rovers cricket match that year. Although the Rovers cricket match
that was when we got Zidane.
Yeah, that was when we saw Zidane for the first time. And in fact, Sharif, Alia, Yasmin and Zidane all made their big debut in 2014. This was one of Stuart Blackburn's biggest legacies, really. One of the things that he's judged on. Producers, I imagine, are quite often judged on the quality of the families that they introduce into the street. Looking back on it, I think, although I know we're down a lot more Nazirs than we started with, but
I mean, it's 50%. It's not that bad.
Well, there was also Cal as well, wasn't there? We've lost
right.
Zidane, Cal, and Sharif, and we're left with Alia and Yasmin. And although I'm obviously not too fussed about Alia, at least we're left with Yasmin. And Yasmin was always the one that we liked the most, wasn't she? The one that we wanted to stay the longest. I think if I compare the Nazirs to, say, the Mortons and the Harrises and other families who've lived in that house,
that's what I was going to say.
They've got a better legacy. But it feels like they're going to be.
Family's been wiped out before now. So the fact that even the two of them are left, it's pretty good going.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't feel like there's any signs, at least with Yasmin, that she's leaving.
I hope not.
Really, really hope not. But I do think that among the fans, they look, if fans who don't like Stuart Blackburn are looking for something else to criticise, they'll often bring up the Nazirs, and they didn't really work, did they? And there have been missed opportunities with the Nazirs, particularly the whole the fact that they were Coronation Street's first Muslim family, and some things have been done with it. And I found it fascinating reading about, watching some of their rituals and traditions and everything, but it does feel a little bit half-baked, and Yasmin started drinking at some time.
To do it anymore.
They mention Ramadan sometimes, but I think in other soaps Muslim characters have been portrayed as being a bit more devout, but still being able to be part of everyday modern life. And it's easy for Corrie to say, let's just forget that they're Muslims.
They can't imagine that Muslims can just be devout and get on with everything. It's like, nah, it doesn't make sense. No, it does make sense.
I think Zidane was probably the most devout of all the Muslims.
Zidane and Cal were more religious.
Was Cal? I don't remember.
Well, I think so.
Because I remember there was
apart
a big
from the whole going out with the prostitute.
Oh yeah, I remember there was a big thing when Zidane got drunk one time, because he didn't drink.
Oh yeah, when his dad died, he got depressed and started drinking.
No, when his dad left.
Who?
Sharif's
dad left.
I keep forgetting. Yeah, Cal is the dad. This is the other thing with the Nazirs. I keep forgetting that Yasmin and Sharif are not Alia and Zidane's parents.
I don't.
Grandparents, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. It was either then or it was when Sharif left that
I thought it was when his dad
started drinking.
I don't know.
And there was also the thing with Alia went on to sleep with Jason, I'm going to say.
Well, the first time she was on the show, she was at a nightclub with Gary.
Yeah. But I still think that at least Alia's still keeping the principles related to alcohol, because she's still on the orange juice, isn't she? And she's fighting back against Jeff wanting to bring booze into the speed dial. But I like the Nazirs. I would say on the whole, I think that they were an enjoyable addition, even if not as successful as Stuart Blackburn would probably have wanted. I still think that they've got a better legacy than most of the other families that have been through that house, to be honest. We haven't mentioned the big thing of 2014, which was the start of the Callum saga, and this felt like it went on and on and on, and I think we complained about it on the podcast, but looking back, I've got quite positive memories about the Callum story. Do you?
I remember it being like the only thing that happened.
There were times when it felt like Coronation Street was just Platts Central.
But this was when it felt like every year was one story. But then the Callum storyline felt like it went on for 2 years, and I'm pretty sure that it did.
Yeah, it did, because I'm going to say that it was kind of mid to late 2014 that Callum was introduced into the show, being Max's real dad, because Kylie starts taking Max's ADHD medicine, and then she goes and hooks up with her ex-boyfriend Callum, the drug dealer, to try and get something a bit harder, and he gets her hooked on speed. And and so that means that 2014 then was also the year that we met Gemma for the first time. Quite different to how she is now. She could see herself back then dressed up how she was this week, all dolled up all nicely in the hotel. She wouldn't even recognise herself.
I think she'd be unhappy with having 4 children with Chesney.
Yes. We had Macca as well, introduced that year. Yeah, I think it was another kind of, dare I say it, dark, grimy, EastEnders-esque kind of story to have a gangster, although I think a lot of people also remember Sean Ward's portrayal of Callum as being a little bit camp. I think
a bit panto-y.
He was a little bit, but I think looking back at him, I thought he was a pretty memorable Coronation Street villain.
Soap villains are a bit camp.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the theatre, part of the panto of it, isn't it? Like you said. There's a lot more to come of that in 2015. We had the return of Dennis Tanner in 2014. Dennis Tanner had come back a few years ago. 2014 was when he left the first time, with Gloria Price in the back of the car, which got me really mad.
Yeah.
And then he comes back midway through the year, back living on the streets again, and then they had him. Did he punch Norris or something like that? They really gave him such a disrespectful exit. Philip Lowry was not the legacy of that character. Somebody who rejoins the show after 40, 42, 43 years away. I just think the character was treated so badly. I wish Dennis Tanner was still in it now. But not only was his first exit dodgy, leaving Rita to go off with Gloria, but then to have him come back just so he can have another bad exit, really, really disappointing. And it's I don't know whether I'd like him to come back again, or whether I think, well, maybe they turn him into more of a wrong 'un again. It's such a shame. But I am looking forward to seeing a young Dennis Tanner on this 1960s box set, because we've not really seen very much apart from the usual clips that get dragged out there. We had Steve's depression starting that year. We had Marcus and Todd's affair, because Marcus had been going out with Maria, hadn't he? And do you remember the scene where, was it Maria or Audrey, or maybe it was both of them, walk in on Marcus and Todd at it on the floor of a house or something? They've gone for a viewing or something, and then they walk in on them naked on the floor.
Who?
Marcus and Todd.
Oh yeah.
And we can't talk about
we
can't talk about scenes from 2014 that were a bit controversial, but people don't look back too fondly on without mentioning Neil on the roof. I quite enjoyed Neil Beckett, Andrea's husband, because she was a bit of a liar, wasn't she? She was making out that she didn't have a husband or something, but he was actually working on the oil rigs, I think. And he comes out trying to woo her with that Atomic Kitten
I
Hole
loved
Again
that.
scene, which
Neil
I
was just
loved.
like the best creepy weird
He was
ex
really creepy
who won't leave
stalker.
you
Take
alone.
that, glasses,
and
Will.
he thought he was being romantic, and he wasn't. He was just creeping around.
Yeah, his grand romantic gesture was climbing onto the Rovers roof, and then we had
Really killing
Andrea
himself.
hanging from it.
Yeah.
Loads of people hate it. Loads of people use that as an example of Stuart Blackburn being an awful producer, but I quite enjoyed that, I have to say. New characters in 2014 that we haven't mentioned yet. Michael Rodwell was 2014. Do you remember when
And
Les
Andy.
Dennis was cast in Coronation
Yeah.
Street, and people were like,
And they
"What,
hounded
Les
him.
Dennis, the game show host?
Can I
What's
just point
he
something
doing?"
out? Les Dennis is the Princess Diana of Coronation Street. They hounded him to his death.
Les Dennis is still alive, but
The character of Michael Rodwell,
yeah.
people wouldn't shut up about how much they hated him being in the show until they literally killed him off.
I
And
loved Michael
he was
Rodwell.
absolutely amazing, and he was victimised by ignorant people that chased him through a tunnel in Paris.
There was definitely quite a lot of hate online that Les Dennis had
It
to
was-
put up with, and
I
half of it
felt
was from people who
really-
didn't even watch
I
Coronation
know,
Street.
they can all just bugger off.
Yeah, that was part of the restorative justice storyline, wasn't it? Because
He was so good in it.
he started off burglarising the Platts
burglarised
house, then he was
Gail.
chased down the road, and then Gail goes into prison, and they
And he
have this
went-
lovely little prison romance.
tried
I
to
thought they were
do-
so sweet. That
They had like a
couple.
micro issues storyline, because they were like, oh, I was affected by the banking crisis of current year, and
Yeah,
I was living in my car,
yeah. But
and
I know
was forced into crime.
he was taken away from us before his prime. I can't remember if it was 2015 or 16 that we lost Michael Rodwell, but I appreciated him.
I
while we
loved
had
him, and I loved the whole Andy storyline.
Oh yeah.
And without Michael, we wouldn't have had Andy, and without Andy, we wouldn't have had Pat in the basement.
Yeah, because that was a brilliant shot. Because Michael, the
That's
story
not even
was
this year, though.
the story was that he was estranged from his son, wasn't it, Gavin?
Yes.
And then Andy Carver comes in pretending to be Gavin, and we
Because he
didn't
wants
realise.
money.
Yeah, we as the viewers didn't know that this wasn't Gavin Rodwell. And then just as a
Yeah.
cliffhanger, and I think it might have been a Friday cliffhanger. We see this guy on the phone saying that he wants to talk to Gavin Rodwell, and we were like, "What? You're not Gavin Rodwell?" That was a brilliant twist. I loved it, and that carried through into the beginning of the following year.
And I
him
loved-
trying to hide the fact that he's actually not who he says.
But then
he is,
also,
imposter.
and the bit where they're going through the
The photo album, yeah, that was 2015 when it dawns on Michael.
I know we shouldn't talk about it yet.
Spoilers.
But I did really like the awkward father-son relationship that they ended up with. Very reminiscent of the Ryan and Ali fake brother relationship that we have now. Like, oh, I guess we're soap family.
Yeah.
I guess family is what you make it. Not really, but okay.
Also debuting in 2015, Dr. Gaddas.
Love
her.
Dr. Gaddas.
Dr. Gaddas. 5 years of Dr. Gaddas we've had now. She's the best doctor. I was glad that we lost Dr. Matt the previous year
How
so that
dare
she
you.
could come in. And also Billy Mayhew arrived in Coronation Street that year. Now, looking back at our notes for that year, at the end of year show, I think I said, and I don't know whether you did as well, that we didn't think that he would last for longer than a year. We thought he was brought in as like a bit character just to facilitate one story. But you know what? 5 years later, Billy is still going strong.
Little did we know, he was incredibly resilient.
He certainly is.
He
isn't
always
he? He always
bounces
bounces back. 2014, we said goodbye to Gloria, to Stella. Don't let the door hit you on the way out because it'll spoil your nice beige dress that you're wearing, or skirt.
Very nice, very good. Reese, is it? Yeah, looks like it.
Pat Phelan went off for a little bit there, and obviously the massive exit in 2014 was Deirdre after the shock death of Anne Kirkbride, who
sad.
we thought she was just recovering.
I know, it's horrible.
From a bit of a breakdown. It was how it was.
I don't even know.
But yeah, it turned out that she was then diagnosed with cancer. And I remember sitting here where we're sitting now that January in 2014, and we both got a Sky News alert at the same time that Anne Kirkbride had died, and I couldn't, but I just didn't know what to say. A massive shot, a huge loss to the show. And although I think Deirdre had been going down the same route as Gail a little bit in the years beforehand, where they'd made her a little bit simpler.
But she just had some brilliant scenes with Ken.
Yeah.
When they went on holiday to Wales together. And it was like, oh yes, okay, brilliant. And then yeah,
and it was there was the tie-in as well with because Ken had been away looking after Adam, hadn't he, in Canada while William Roach was away from the show. He comes back, and I think him and Deirdre only got a few months of final scenes together before she did a Jelly shouldn't run, it should wobble scene, smash it against the wall. That was a pretty great final scene that she had in 2014, to be fair. And then we lost her. So it's a real shame. It's not shame, doesn't seem like the right word for it, really, does it? But yeah, so sad that we had to say goodbye to her. I think that was her last appearance then. But sorry, I think it was the beginning of the following year that Anne Kirkbride died. But yeah, we said goodbye without realising that we were saying goodbye to Deirdre in 2014. We had a strange return from Scylla, which didn't really work. Do you remember she came back, but this to facilitate Jenny McAlpine's
really
maternity,
subdued and needing help, and it was pointless because she didn't need to be the character didn't need to be like that at all.
No, I mean the drama around it was that Chesney would refuse to believe that she turned over a new leaf that she kind of had, and the other side of the leaf was just a little bit boring.
Yeah, like how you have a nice smooth side of the leaf and it looks pretty. You flip it over and it's all veiny and horrible. And you're like, oh, turn it back.
Yeah, and they gave her osteoporosis, which really
bummed her out.
It stops the possibility of the character making a proper return. And then after that,
won't they think of these things when they diagnose people with illnesses?
So it's always nice to see an old face again, but it was a shame that they had to.
Can you not say her. Familiar face, please?
Familiar face. Right, so that takes us into 2015, which was
how many years are we doing?
This is the last one. We've only done 2 years so far.
Oh,
we get through it quickly if you want. It depends what happens. This was the year that Stuart Blackburn announced that he was leaving the show. Around the time of the live episode, because this was
he did it live on air. I'm going, bye bitches.
Yeah, he came right in the middle of the live episode. Stuart Blackburn just walked out in front of the camera and said, "Peace out." Yeah, throws the hat over the front of the camera.
And the person who caught it was...
Kate Oates. It was announced that Kate Oates would be the new producer. Look at this hair.
Would you cover it? I don't think so.
It's announced that Kate Oates would be the producer, but she didn't start until the following year. So that live episode was written to celebrate ITV's 60th anniversary.
It's always some bloody anniversary you've got to buy something for.
And that was that saw the gruesome end of Callum Logan, didn't it? I think leading up to it, I don't know whether we knew that Sean Ward was leaving or not.
Yeah.
I can't remember. We might have known that he was leaving, but we didn't know how he was going to leave or when he was going to leave. But yeah, that was some really
live episode.
Very technically well done. I don't think
we're explaining anything that happened very well.
That's all right.
Live episode.
I'm kind of hoping that people listening remember it.
Beaten to death by
Kylie Platts.
Kylie trying to save Sarah from being raped and possibly murdered by an evil drug dealer in her own house.
Yeah.
Because once you've got stain in the carpet, I mean, look at the washing machine.
But it's
never been the same.
It did, it did give Kylie a bit of a sell-by date as well, didn't it? The clock was ticking for that character. That even though she killed a villain, they couldn't necessarily keep her in.
Let's not pretend that soap justice is proportional or logical anymore.
That was a very well done live episode. I think that might be the time that Roy and Kathy had their first kiss as well, possibly, because they had them as a couple for a little bit, didn't they? Because 2015 saw Melanie Hill debut on Corrie as Kathy. Really liked the character at the beginning. I have gone off her a bit more since. She was a bit more serious and sensible, and I felt that she was quite suitable for Roy. And I remember at the time thinking, Roy can't move on to somebody to new. Hayley's barely cold, but
well, it's your fault then.
But actually, I think that they had a nice bit of chemistry going there, the two of them. So it's a shame.
The writers were like, no, everybody loves a dapper bachelor, and that's exactly what we're going to make Roy. Like a ladies' man, always got a nod and a wink. If we tie him down now, it's going to take away all of his charm.
Yeah. Right, what did we have as some main stories in 2015?
It's like George Clooney.
Minibus crash early on in the year.
Never heard of him since he got married, have you? Nope. She's tied him right down.
Underworld minibus crash. Does that stick in your memory?
Yeah, I remember. They had a crash in the minibus right near the edge of the cliff, and everyone was buggering around on the wrong end of it, and they're going, "Watch out, you're going to die."
That was quite exciting.
Yeah,
I think, and it also tied
Everyone's in a bush.
also tied in with Steve's depression, because wasn't he driving the minibus?
He's like, "I've messed up here,"
and then he walks off and he doesn't go and help people, does he?
Yeah,
and it's
rude.
left to the likes of Tracy and that, and Carla to save everybody. That also left.
I can't do it, I'm a lady.
That also left Sinead paralysed, didn't it? Temporarily paralysed, flat on her back.
Wheelchair friend, where's he? Don't know. Did he come to the funeral? No.
Yeah, it was just a chance
I
for
don't know. I
Kate
didn't
McGlynn
watch
to
it.
lie down for a few scenes, and then she had a miraculous recovery. So I didn't feel like we really got very many long-term effects of the minibus crash.
We did have Victoria Court fire, another big stunt where
yeah.
we got rid of 2 characters for the price of 1.
Cal and Maddie,
Yeah, Maddie got blown up running past the garage, and Cal got blown up because Leanne's waffling.
Yeah, because of Leanne accepting his proposal at not the right moment. I enjoyed the Victoria Court fire. That was another one that I think some Coronation Street fans think was a little bit too overdone, or it didn't work so well. But I think they did a pretty good job with that, to be honest. Although I was gutted that Maddie was killed off the way that she did.
I was so upset because she was
Really
going to
upset.
leave the show. We knew she was leaving because she had plans to go travelling and look at elephants.
With Sophie.
And I know that she's watching elephants in heaven, but it's not the same thing.
Maddie was brought in. How long has she been in the show? It can't
Not
have
very
been
long.
much more than a year, probably. But she was another kind of scally turn good, wasn't she? Which Corrie's always good at doing.
She was homeless.
And I really, really did like the
Wasn't she?
relationship. Yeah, she was.
And Sophie was helping her as a Christian.
Yes.
But then she began to help her as a lesbian.
Exactly.
It's 2 for 1.
Yeah, I really liked the Sophie-Maddie relationship, and it was a shame that it didn't last very long. But, yeah, sad.
Carla got depressed, got a gambling problem, nearly jumped off a cliff.
Carla, the Victoria Court fire was caused by Tracy.
It was caused by Sinead's stupid candles.
This all kind of...
And then nobody ever acknowledged that fact.
There's a lot of this that ties in together with the minibus crash and everything, because Carla and Tracy, I think it was around this time that they're having that feud, which did go
really
on a bit too
boring
long,
feud.
and it destroyed the character of Carla a little bit, and Tracy for a while, but I think she's bounced back.
Which is really sad, because it really, in theory, on paper, should have worked brilliantly. Like the 2 big bitches of the street.
Yeah.
Facing off against each other, but it just turned them into naggy old cows.
Yeah, totally.
Like, really petty.
So, but Carla thought that she started the fire because it was in her flat, wasn't it? But Tracy had gone to her flat with a
She
candle.
knocked something over.
I can't remember whether she went to set it on fire or not. I
Well,
don't
she
think
didn't
did.
know that
She didn't know that Amy was there.
Amy was staying over, so that was...
And that was something that had been kept from the viewers as well. I do like, I love it when they don't tell us things. And although we knew the fire was going to happen, we didn't know that Amy was potentially going to get killed in it. And obviously she didn't, but that was cool. And they had...
Have they ever killed a kid?
I don't know.
They killed loads of babies, but they haven't killed a
They
kid.
don't count, do they?
Suspicious.
Carla ended up nearly jumping off a cliff at the end of that as well, and Tracy has to talk her down. That was kind of exciting.
Don't do it. I know
but-
Billy Mayhew.
But Maddie's story dying, so talking about Maddie dying, also leads me to remember who she was running away from when she runs past the builder's garage. Only Jenny wearing a wig Bradley. Because 2015 saw the best return we have had in Coronation Street since we have been doing this podcast. Jenny Flaming Bradley.
Has Jenny ever apologised for killing Maddie? Probably.
Shit, that was such a triumphant return, and completely unexpected for us. Unexpected how much we'd enjoy it and how much we'd appreciate the character and how much we'd love Sally Ann Matthews' performance, because there's a recording of us talking about Jenny the week before she rejoined the show back in January, February time. We were saying, oh yeah, I've heard of Jenny Bradley, don't know much about her, could be interesting, could be boring.
That's libel. I don't think I ever said that.
I don't know what we said.
What would I have said about Jenny Bradley?
Well, I think we just
You were telling me. I'd never heard of her.
I think we were both a bit nonplussed by her.
Yeah, because I didn't...
You knew that she was the daughter of that guy who got hit by a tram was about as much
I don't
as...
think I'd ever actually even seen the tram crash.
But yeah, Jenny, what a revelation.
Yes.
What a fantastic move
Amazing.
to bring her back. Wonderful performance
Wigs,
all the way around.
balconies, child dangling,
that wig.
secret backstories, dead children, crying, swimming pools, birthday parties, phone calls.
Yeah, Tom. Yeah.
who've had it all.
That was so good, and the breakdown that we saw from Jenny when she was doing that balcony
So
dangling
good.
was just great. And then she sadly got sectioned, and we always hoped that
all
she'd
the
be
best
brought
ones
back.
do.
We did have to go for another year or so without Jenny, didn't we? But
Yeah.
that I loved that story, and
She was so good
interesting
in it.
seeing her and Kevin paired up, and they haven't had very many scenes together in the years since, really. Although it's partly probably to do with she can't go anywhere. Can't go within 100 metres of Jack or something. Love her, Jenny Bradley. What else did we have that year? We had
More Callum stuff.
more Callum stuff.
Max
we talked about.
Cassidy, Kylie, Sarah dating him, thinking
Yeah.
she was smug. Sarah dating Callum, thinking she's all that, reminds me of Maria dating Gary and thinking she's all that.
Yeah, that's true, actually. And with Callum's murder, like we talked about earlier, that then led to him getting buried underneath Gail's annex, which is very Brookside when you think
Well,
back on it.
and there is no such innuendo as being buried in someone's annex, but somehow they made it
felt
sound
like
really
it.
dirty.
It sounded fun and grim, didn't
Like
it?
it sounded like some kind of move that you have to pay extra for.
Do you remember at the time there was rumours and wonderings about whether Callum was actually dead?
You kept saying, yeah,
You're
I was
convinced.
convinced. I was convinced he wasn't dead, and you were convinced that he was going to remain underneath the floorboards.
I wanted him to
for
stay
like
there
10
for years to
or
come.
more. Like
But we'll
you,
find
you
out
were
next
like,
time.
this is a legacy storyline. He's going to come out of there.
Well, like, it was either going to be him or it was going to be Colin Fishwick, and neither of them could stay buried for long, could they? So yeah, I thought that was great, and it was the start of seeing a really good period for Tina O'Brien, because I think it was 2015 that she was brought back into the show, her and Bethany, and what a story to go back to.
Because before then you were like, you always used to say, oh, it'd be really great if Sarah Platt came back. She's living in Italy now, blah blah blah, and we always used to talk about her daughter that she had, and I was
Sexy
totally
Italian
convinced she was going
strumpet.
to come back as a sexy Italian. You've just stolen what I was going to say, but she didn't. She came back slightly earlier than we had anticipated.
Yes.
Because I genuinely was expecting her to be, an older teen character who was ready to date anyone.
Yeah.
Whereas she was too young, really, to be thrown into the adult dating pool just yet.
Yeah.
But she did have really good, compelling storylines.
She did.
Really worth both those
just not.
characters coming
I don't
back.
know whether she would actually have that accent if she lived in Milan for all that time, but never mind.
And
of course she could-
no word of Italian.
Yeah, of course things could have been very, very different, because there was going
I
to be a
know.
different actress playing her. Lucy Fallon could have been an unknown if
Twinkle in our eyes.
if the original actress hadn't been found out that she was actually about, what was it, 5-10 years older than she said she was. I don't remember.
Well,
but that was quite fun.
The other thing is, Lucy Fallon would have ended up on Coronation Street in some form or another, because how many stories do we hear of people who went to the casting,
That's very
went to the
true.
audition of this, that and the other thing, didn't get it, got called back for something else, or just kept on trying until they got another part.
Yeah, that's very true. She could. I wonder who else she could have played.
I was just thinking that. Who could she have played? And I can't think of anybody
off the top of my head. Beginning of the year as well, we had
Somebody in
Faye's
Brookside.
pregnancy. Faye's pregnancy was quite a big one at the time, it felt like. But
Faye's-
then, as soon as the baby
Faye's
popped out, it was like
secret
stopped.
pregnancy.
Yeah, well, she didn't realise that she was pregnant until she only had a few months left, did she?
Is it gas? Is it a baby? I don't know, but your sex education is dire.
And we got to see a really interesting friendship develop between her and Craig, which again hasn't really
Fair weather friends.
had that much.
He's there when you're having a
development
baby.
since.
When you want to chat about what happened on TV last night? Nowhere to be
Because
found.
people were wondering, like, are Craig and Faye going to get together
I
when they're
really
older?
liked this. No, I really like the fact that Craig was just there for her and helped her, and there was no.
because he was a bit older than her.
Yeah, but yeah. So basically, the storyline was Faye got pregnant. She didn't know she was pregnant, and then she and Craig found out that she was pregnant, and they kept it a secret. And literally, I think Craig helped deliver the baby,
I think.
which was Miley.
Yeah, and Anna didn't know about it, did she? But I think when Faye went into labour, Craig
Yeah, I think
went
he had
to
to
find
get
Anna,
her.
and so
Like,
Anna was there.
I am just a child. I can't deal with it.
And that story had a bit of a potential.
And it's like, Craig, at your age, in medieval times, this would have been your 5th child, so shut up and deliver it.
That story had potential to show more of the consequences of teen pregnancy in the same way that 15 years previously we'd had with Sarah Lou and Bethany. But in the end, it's just like, oh God, what are we
Ship
going to
her
do
off.
with this baby? Ship her off to the father, and barely been mentioned
She's got
since.
a silly name, get rid of her.
So, I mean, we find baby stories pretty dull, don't we?
Well, yeah, she did the best thing for herself. Get rid of this boring child.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be dragged down boring storylines like what happened to Gemma.
Yeah, as much as it did have a missed potential, I think probably for the best, really.
Can you imagine us watching Call the Midwife? Oh, God, they've ruined another character.
Dan the Chin.
Love
remember
him?
him?
Yeah.
His story was he was somebody who was revealed to be an ex-client of Leanne's during her prostitute
I thought he could
days.
open cans with his chin. That was his
That
thing.
was played by, I can't remember what the actor was called, but he
He's
used
in
to
The
play Dave Quinnan in The Bill, didn't he? And yeah, he turned violent or something, and then that in turn led to Simon becoming violent and beating up Leanne.
He doesn't need
This was definitely still a time when we didn't like
little
Leanne,
toe
so I
rag.
don't think we felt a whole lot of sympathy for her there. But I think they're the main things that happened in 2015.
Hope had cancer.
Hope had cancer.
Do you remember that? No.
Oh yeah, then they had the best Christmas ever, didn't they? Winter
with-
Wonderland.
Well, Michael's Christmas was the best Christmas ever until what's-his-face ruined it. Derek.
Yeah, I think we were talking about me. I didn't have a great Christmas that year because that was 2 weeks after my mum died.
God. No, I wasn't referring to
No,
you.
of course. That was when we had that 2 weeks off of the podcast, didn't we? The only weeks that we've ever missed since we started. Other new characters in 2015, we've mentioned the main ones, but along with Kathy, we had Nessa, her sister.
Yeah, her sister who also having an affair with her husband.
Yeah, and that sort of spawned Alex.
You can tell I was actually paying attention during these years because I know what the hell's going on.
I think that 2015, looking back on it, felt
good.
Felt
also,
good.
The other thing about it is that it feels that like all the stories were interconnected. So once you start remembering one storyline, you suddenly remember all the other things that happened.
Yeah, very true. When Sinead was paralysed, we saw the introduction of the Tinkers, which are kind of interesting characters that we'll probably never see again now. And then also we had Caitlin, who was Craig's girlfriend for a bit, the daughter of...
She was...
What's her face? Paddy McGuinness, was it?
Oh, yeah.
She was
like
the
a
artist.
proto-goth.
Yeah, she was. I really liked her and Craig together.
She was great, but she was just too normal.
Long. Yeah, totally.
That's why they brought Nina in. They're like, let's have Caitlin, but with more frills.
Just looking down at our leaving characters list, and two characters that we lost in the live episode, which I was gutted about, was Lloyd and Andrea. Although they drove off in the car and then they came back for some reason. They drove off
like they were in a parade, waving goodbye everybody, goodbye, and then they came back and went, yeah, we're going.
Yeah, that was weird. Oh, I miss Lloyd and Andrea. I would love them to come back.
Me too.
Hayley Tamardon's
I wouldn't even mind if it was just Andrea, because I thought Andrea was so much fun.
She was great. She was a real breath of fresh air on the street. She had that lovely smile. She was full of energy.
I think
she did irritate people by how lively she was. Some viewers, but
some people get annoyed about anything. Why'd you bring that up?
Absolutely love Andrea.
I just said it was all down to how great Hayley was, and you went, yeah. Some people found her annoying.
No, so I'm just gonna say. I thought she was fantastic, and she didn't get long enough in the show.
No.
Really, really didn't. I would love for her to come back.
Actors who was a victim of their co-star deciding to leave.
She was, because Craig Charles needed to go back off to film those extra series of Red Dwarf, didn't he? So she
they
kind
went,
of had
we
to
can't
go.
think of why she would stay on the show without him.
It's nice, to be fair, it's nice to see a couple happily leaving together. That does not happen very much on the street, does it?
Just for the moral integrity.
You don't often see two people going off in the back of a taxi and just saying it's usually just one. So it was nice, and wasn't she pregnant
now
as well?
Yeah, they have got a kid apparently. They live on an island. They live in Jersey.
They live in Guernsey, I think, now. Lloyd
thing.
and Andrea. And we also said goodbye to Julie Carp last year as well. And through all of this, we've not really mentioned Julie. I keep saying last year to refer to the year we're talking about. I remember at the time loving Julie.
Julie was
now
really
I think
fun.
back on her, I don't know about how much she did.
But she was a background character. He just kind of added colour. She was revealed to be Eileen's half sister.
Yeah.
That's why there is a photo of her to this day
still
in Eileen's house. But she never talks about her.
Do you remember when
she was also dating Brian, and he never talks about her either.
Yeah, because Brian went off to be a teacher in Wales. No, they didn't.
Oh.
He went off to be a teacher in Wales, and she stayed on. But then he came back.
I remember some shouting through a letterbox.
Oh, I don't remember now, but they were. I like them together. Do you remember towards the end of the Kirsty storyline where Kirsty slapped Kate? That's on Katie Kavanagh who played, who slapped Julie, and Julie because Katie was pregnant. I think went through a big cape wearing phase.
Yeah.
And I remember her being slapped with this cape.
She
flying.
did look like she was like, "Can I be Uncle the midwife?
Yeah.
Look at my cape."
So that is the end of 2015, and
that was the moment, the sad moment, when I saw her, because obviously she was hiding the fact that she was pregnant, but I wear capes to hide the fact that I am fat. And I watched it and I went, oh, it doesn't work. I have to stop doing this. Nobody's fooled.
That is
what a sad revelation for me.
I forgot the Connors. We had the Connor clan explosion in 2015. Didn't we? I think we get to say more of those in the next bit. But we saw the beginning of Kate, Johnny, and Aidan.
An STD on the street. Aidan came first, then Johnny came after.
I think Johnny and Kate came at the same time because Aidan bought the factory off of Carla.
Stole the money off his dad.
Yeah, exactly. And the big revelation at the very end of the year was that Johnny was actually Carla's father, which is another bit of a retcon. But yeah, reading back over 2015, that feels out of those three to have been the strongest year. And you may well go back and listen to the podcast and I might be saying different things, but you know, in hindsight, that felt to me like it was a good year. But it was soon to be replaced by something that we ended up loving a lot more the next 3 years, with Kate Oates at the helm for the majority of it.
Who we kept calling Kate Oakes for about 2 years.
We did call her Kate Oakes for quite a while, yeah. And I was looking back at our notes at the end of the year show, and we typed Kate Oakes all over the place.
Who did?
Probably me. But yeah, so next week we're going to be having a bit of a breather for this, where we have our special 400th episode interview. But following that, we'll be looking at the final 3 years, if you don't count 2019, of the decade, which had some, in our opinion, I think, some pretty good stuff. So we hope you enjoyed our discussion of this. Again, if you want to write in and tell us anything about your favourite bits, or if you're listening to this on YouTube, write in some comments. Okay. Then no, yes, whatever. We don't mind, however. But we'll be back, and I think it is now time to go to the news section. So over to the cabin.